Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of the Harsch Review, where we discuss all things movie, TV, and entertainment. My name is Sean, and with me is my brother Ryan.
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Today's episode is going to be a feature on HBO's hit show, The Wire. But first, Ryan, what have you been watching?
Hey, not much, just waiting for the week to die down, and this week I finished watching Wormwood on Netflix.
Wormwood. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so Wormwood is a quasi-documentary, and it's kind of take a very interesting approach. I mean, it has acting mixed with some narrative, voiceover, interview type stuff. So, it blends it together really well, very engaging. Pretty much it's about the MK Ultra CIA mind control experiments of the early 1950s.
Oh, and, okay.
Yeah, focuses on a specific character who was a central part of that little experiment. So I really liked it. I kept me going. It's a very short run. It's about 6 little episodes. I guess recently they screened the whole thing in New York, and it's about 4 or 5 hours. So,
nice.
But it flies right by. It's great.
Yeah, I'm about 2 episodes deep into it. It's been nice, slow, and steady developing. I didn't know if it was like a mockumentary or if it was real at first, so I had to do a little bit of research, and yeah, it's legit.
Yeah, it very, very informative.
Is this the same era that Ted Kaczynski went through with his tests when he was in college?
I think it's pretty much the precursor to it. This is pretty much where they started using LSD as a form of mind control on potential enemies. This was the 50s, so everybody was afraid of communists, and that was the perceived threat. So they were looking into things like mind control, like LSD. So I think it was right before that. I believe Kaczynski was late 50s, but pretty close in time. Really interesting at how these kind of things remain secret for a long time, and then they're uncovered and brought to the fore, and we start to learn more about them, especially when the living relatives of whoever was around at that time start speaking up about it. So
yeah, it's always fascinating how some of these stories come to light, and the government's just kind of like, it's been long enough, have at it.
Yeah, we'll declassify all those documents.
Right on. So who's this show for? Who would be interested in this?
Anyone really who likes documentaries, I think. The director did another one called The Fog of War about Robert McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War. Enjoyed that a lot. So, I mean, if you like an engaging documentary that takes a slightly different approach than your standard one, I would definitely check this out. And especially if you're into history, even if you're into conspiracy theories, I think this would be right up your alley.
And this is on Netflix?
This is on Netflix.
Awesome. Wormwood, Netflix. Check it out.
Yeah. What about you?
It's been a quiet week. It was a disappointing week. So had some family visiting, and everybody wanted to watch something on TV. So of course this is the situation where they're like, no, not that. No, not this. Let's watch a comedy.
Golden Girl reruns.
Yeah, no. So anyways, I go to Netflix, go down to comedies, and pick the first one I haven't seen, which happened to be Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales.
That's a comedy?
It's classified as a comedy on Netflix, and it is pretty accurate because this movie is terrible.
Oh
yeah. I mean, come on. After the first one, the magic that they captured in the first one, which is still a decent movie. It's not amazing, but it's still very enjoyable.
I like it.
It's been downhill since then, and this is about as rock bottom as you can get.
Ouch.
Still, you get the same characters back. Johnny Depp, Javier Bardem is the Captain Salazar. He's the main bad guy in here. Jeffrey Rush comes back again as Captain Barbosa.
Bardem's kind of fallen off the ladder there by doing this movie.
Yeah, he clearly had to pay some bills. It's, I guess the way I would kind of describe it, if you haven't seen it, and I don't recommend it, but if you're looking for, imagine them taking the script and going, yeah, this is an animated movie, this is a cartoon, and then somewhere in the end they went, you know what, let's just film everything, and this is
screw it.
Yeah, this is what you get. So, I mean, there's some cool scenarios and cool scenes, but it was so campy and comical. It's kind of a shame to see what they did with Johnny Depp's character, because ultimately that's where you go, the writing and what they had him do. It just didn't hold up. It was just old and tired, and you could definitely feel the cash grab to it.
It's one of those movies where you're like embarrassed to watch it around other people.
Yeah, and
right, you're just all kind of looking at each other like, oh no.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But you know, the biggest spoilers on there, and since the movie is terrible, I don't care, is it does bring back Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley to somehow, I guess, resolve their story like it was necessary. Orlando Bloom is in the very beginning.
Who cares?
He's definitely looking a little bit more aged and weathered. And at the very end, he gets reunited with Keira Knightley, and she doesn't speak. It's just like smiles and hugs, and then it's like, all right, roll it, wrap it up.
Might not even be her.
Nah, yeah, I know, CGI.
Yeah,
it was her, but it was just dumb. It was a bad movie overall. But if you're bored and you're looking for something to entertain you, maybe it's for you. But it wasn't for me.
So that's a scathing review there, Sean.
Yeah, well. Shouldn't be surprised. Dead men tell no tales.
Yeah, well, they really shouldn't, because that movie came out. So
yeah. Oh, and the last part.
That's one tale they should have kept to themselves.
Here's the worst thing about it: the surprise cameo. You know who it is?
Is it Keith Richards?
Nope. Even better.
Mick Jagger.
Nope. Close.
One more guess.
Yeah, one more guess.
Go. Tom Cruise.
Oh, come on! You're close. Paul McCartney. It was terrible. It was weird. I don't know. He looked like Teen Wolf's dad, and it was so bad. But he had this dumb little scene where he's like, "Oh, Uncle Jack," or whatever his name. I don't know what his name was, and they just had this dumb little cute exchange. They did work in a couple singing lines for him, very similar to. You know, they had Ed Sheeran on Game of Thrones, and they're like, give the character some singing lines. So right away, you know it's Paul before you see the costume and makeup job. It just looks like a chubby version of him. It looks like Teen Wolf's dad. So
I thought vegetarians didn't get all chubby.
Well, it's
what's going on?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of tofu going on. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Let me hit the mute button while I vomit.
Yeah, it was weird. It was kind of like going, all right, Paul, this is clearly a favor to somebody, but
yeah, those Beatles royalties aren't doing it for you, Paul.
Is what it is.
Hey,
yeah, couldn't leave it alone. But
everybody gets divorced and then they need money, so
that's that. Oh yeah, his divorce.
Yeah.
All right, so
Johnny Depp.
Let's move it on. Let's talk about The Wire.
All right, well, The Wire, one of our previous episodes, we did Clockwork Orange, one of my favorite movies. Now I wanted to take on one of my favorite TV shows. So we have The Wire, and this is a beloved show by many. I was kind of late to the party on it, to be honest with you. I heard all the hubbub and people talking about it, and I was just like, all right, let me check it out. And I immediately got hooked on it. 5 seasons, 60 episodes, ran on HBO from 2002 to 2008. It's honestly like a really good book, or, if you want to break it down by season 5, really good books.
Yeah.
Just a wealth of characters. The storylines are engaging. A lot of things intertwine. You really kind of get with these characters, and you feel for them, and you get wrapped up in their story. And I'm not a big fan of cop shows. Like, going into it, I'm not a really big CSI guy. I think the closest I got to liking a cop show was, like a Magnum PI kind of thing.
So you're saying that cops don't like you?
Cops don't like me, and I don't like cops. Edit that out, please. just in case. No, but I mean, this show takes place in Baltimore, but honestly, it could be really any city in America at this point. I mean, it brings a lot of attention to the city. Obviously, it's shot there on location, but after you get into this world, it's pretty much like a microcosm for any urban area in the country, really. Really kind of takes off in the first episode, first season. It really centers on the drug scene in Baltimore, and it's a unique approach because it's seen through the eyes of not just the cops, the law enforcement that are out to get these guys, but the drug dealers, the drug users, all the people on the fringes that are involved, politicians, the higher ups, and law enforcement. It's through the eyes of all of these people, all these characters, and they kind of just bring everything together. So that's kind of the basic premise. If you haven't seen it, go out and stop now, get watching. I'm not gonna spoil anything too crazy, but it's been out for a while, almost 10 years now. So
yeah, if people are surprised, it's their fault. So let's dive in a little bit now. Yeah. When did you actually watch it?
Well, it ended in 2008. I think I started seeing it in about 2009. I do remember, and I don't know why I slept on it, honestly. I do remember seeing an episode on HBO, and I was kind of lost because it's one of those shows where you really have to start from the beginning to get to know the characters, get to know what's going on, and then you have to pretty much follow it through. So a little like a Game of Thrones. Unlike Game of Thrones, I know all the characters' names. Game of Thrones, I'll watch. I don't know their name. Like half the people that come out, I don't know who they are. I don't know their names.
Yeah.
Guy shows up. I haven't seen him in like 2 years. Forgot his name. On The Wire, it's like I can call everybody like, one name, and that's the character. That's pretty much who they are.
Mm-hmm.
There's McNulty, Bunk, Stringer, Omar. The list just goes on. Just a lot of different people involved, and a lot of people you really haven't seen like in many other shows. Couple of the characters are British. So Dominic West is from Ireland, actually, and Idris Elba's British, and their American accents are like great.
They're spot on.
Yeah, spot on. And Baltimore is pretty much considered, bordering the South, so it's kind of takes a little bit of that British accent, works it in. Here it works really great. A lot of it, seems a lot like a documentary at times. Just kind of way it's shot, the dialogue, a lot of it seems kind of improvised. So, the dialogue is amazing. Just like the way people talk to each other. It sounds like they really either kind of rehearsed this ahead of time, got to know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
It gels really well. You're never really, and it doesn't like stay on one thing for a long time. It's episodic. So it'll go from kind of one scene to another, back into what you were seeing before. But there's always kind of a resolution at the end. So.
Sure. Well, this is another one that I watched off of your recommendation, and okay. I think I may have gotten through the first season and then kind of cooled off, and then I went back to it like, no, I got to get it done. And
yeah,
you do get a little hooked, and you are pretty curious. I would say rather quickly, because it is very different from how most shows are organized and shot. You definitely need to commit to it, but you are following the characters the most. And what I notice is that through all the seasons, you're really watching the evolution and progression of the characters. The storyline is really secondary. At least that's in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. And with these characters, you're really kind of, it's almost like you're hanging out with them. You are seeing their evolution. And you even kind of at points you sympathize with the bad guys.
Sure.
And then you look at the good guys and you're like, these guys aren't really good. They're doing things that are unethical, or a lot of these guys who are out to catch these drug dealers, they're almost like criminals themselves in a way.
Yeah, it's a matter of perspective of how you want to look at it. They don't really have it as the good versus bad. It's just more of, this is the position that we're in, and this is the position that they're in.
Exactly.
And that was interesting, is the level of empathy you have for the struggles that a lot of the characters have.
Oh yeah, and the thing is like you get attached to some of these characters and then they end up dying.
Mm.
And like some of them end up dying, and it's like and the show just keeps going. It's not like, in a lot of shows, like they'll center the whole episode around a character dying and there's a big to do about it. In this show, it's just, death or, family disruption. All those are seen as just pretty much everyday things that occur in this city or really any city. And it just keeps going. So, I mean, it's not really lecturing you. You never really feel that way. But it raises a lot of key issues that were prevalent 10 years ago and issues that are still going on today. So, I mean, some of the themes brought up are definitely the war on drugs. And I mean, this show takes a pretty hard stance on a lot of these issues. You're never really in the dark about where the writers and the producers stand on a lot of these issues. The guy who created the show, wrote the show for some part, his name's David Simon, and he did a show called Homicide. He wrote actually a book called Homicide.
Yeah, Life on the Street, right?
Yeah. And that took place in Baltimore as well. So it was kind of the precursor to The Wire. He did that first, and then he's done shows like Treme. He's done Generation Kill, which is a pretty good show. He did another one that I didn't know about until like a year ago called Show Me a Hero.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, and Oscar Isaac's in it, and he's great. He's pretty much good in everything I've seen him do.
When did that one come out? Is that pretty recent?
That, according to my notes, is 2015.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, pretty short run. It's interesting. It's kind of about city politics and just fighting the system, and a lot of The Wire too is centered around that. It's like bureaucracy and how these guys are playing this cat and mouse game with the drug dealers, but it's like we have to get court documents filled out. We have to go through the higher ups, and they might not approve it. They want headlines now, so they're going to make a bust instead of waiting another 6 months until they get the information they need. So just a lot of like, it seems silly, like the kind of red tape and the bureaucracy they have to go to, but it all feels real. I mean, this is, I think, pretty much what happens.
Yeah.
And Simon was a journalist, so he kind of knows the insides of all these things.
And aside from, acting or casting pitfalls that may have come here or there where you don't see the best performances from everybody, in my opinion, I think that the strongest character is the city and the authenticity that kind of comes through when you're watching that. It's rarely ever feels like you're on a set. And yeah. I think that leads a lot to the situations that you're in where you're kind of watching it going, wow, this seems like exactly what it would be like. I've been through Baltimore, but never that area. And, but it's there. And I think that The Wire does that better than most shows when it comes to an on location shot.
Yeah, and I'll get into that later, kind of what the mayor of Baltimore actually thought of their portrayal, because it's not like the most flattering portrayal, but it is real.
Yeah.
It shows a lot of love for the city, but at the same time, it exposes this kind of underbelly that exists that, maybe a lot of people ignore, but it's nonetheless there, and it's the root of a lot of problems.
And it's also a show that really focuses on, politicians, addicts, police, and criminals, as I would say the main different sections of points of view that you get from it, right. Where a lot of other shows are very biased towards one of those, but you really kind of feel a balance here. Is there any other shows that come to mind that if somebody hasn't seen The Wire that is similar to it?
Honestly, not that I can think of in this vein. It's very unique. The original Homicide show comes pretty close. Just kind of the way everything's shot. There's actually like 2 DVD versions of this show, and I'm proud to say I own both. And it differs in the aspect ratio, which I'm not too familiar with, and I don't really care to get into. But the first release is like the original, how it's supposed to look on TV, so it's kind of like that squared off look.
Yeah, for 2000 and mid 2000s, where widescreen TVs were not as common. Right.
So there's that version, and then the Blu-ray came out not too long ago, and that's pretty much just what you see now. So David Simon prefers the original version. He says this is something that he wanted to be made for TV. But that's a good question. Honestly, I can't really think of a show that comes kind of close to this, and I think that's why it's so beloved.
Yeah.
It's really kind of a dark horse. It stands on its own. It tackles a lot of issues, and it doesn't hold back, really. It goes after the press, looks at poverty, looks at social plight. law enforcement, social reform. There's a season that deals a lot with education.
That's right.
Unions. Yeah, and that's one of the favorite ones. It's one of my favorite ones. And I mean, a lot of this stuff, again, it's heartbreaking. It's because there's not really a happy ending to the show at all. I mean, and a lot of people would attack the writers and say, "Oh, this is cynical," but it's like, no, this is really happening.
Well, they didn't give in. They didn't give in to the normal pitfalls that a lot of shows will give to you, and that's rewarding the viewers too much. I appreciate characters that are gray, and I would say almost everybody on this show is gray. They're neither really good or bad. They're just right neutral, looking after their best interests.
Right. I mean, my favorite character is Omar. And Omar's played by Michael Kenneth Williams, and he's kind of like an anti-hero. I mean, he's like a Robin Hood of the hood. He has this kind of like, it's very iconic because he wears this like long duster coat, so he kind of looks like an Old West guy. And when he's walking around, he starts whistling a tune, and everybody's like, "Here comes Omar!" And he doesn't really go after anybody but the drug dealers, and then he kind of gives back to the people. So, I mean, in his, he kind of disappears for a minute, then he comes back, and it's like a great thing. He's one of my favorite characters on the show, though. It's just so iconic, and Michael Kenneth Williams plays him so well. It's amazing.
Yeah, I definitely loved him. I actually discovered him, I think, first through Boardwalk Empire's Chalky White.
Yeah.
And when I went and watched The Wire, you could see where those roots kind of came from.
Sure.
He did a great job.
Sure. He did. Actually, when he was filming it, during the third season, he got hooked on cocaine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he never missed a day of work. He was never late. And, he says a lot of this was because the character Omar got kind of popular. So he, like him as a character or as just an actor, he started suffering like this identity crisis and this anxiety.
Yeah.
But I mean,
and he wasn't a huge known actor going into this show. Am I correct there?
Yeah. And even there's a couple other guys like Idris Elba, who's pretty well known now, but when he was on this show, and he's another one of my favorite characters. He plays Stringer, who's kind of the second-hand man to the main drug dealer in season 1 through 3, Avon. But kind of like Bush and Cheney, Stringer's the guy, kind of like a Cheney pulling all the strings and making everything happen, and then you have your front man who's Avon. So
gotcha.
And that all kind of unravels, so it has a little commentary there.
And they're all part of what's the organization called? They're all part of. Isn't that the Barksdale? Isn't that like their?
Yeah, it's the Barksdale, and then later it becomes like a syndicate where they team up with other drug dealers. Which I think borrows a little bit from the cartels and what they did south of the border. Where a lot of these drug dealers like just kind of teamed up and made a conglomerate. And then the Stringer character, Idris Elba, I mean, shows like a lot of intelligence. This guy, like, he goes to economics classes over at the college, and then he brings that information back to the drug dealing trade and applies it there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't like, even the bad guys, quote unquote, are treated with a lot of intelligence, respect. And, you don't see that in a lot of other shows. A lot of other shows, those kind of people are really just kind of flat and one dimensional. And here they're complex and they're developed, and then they die. So
yeah.
They die or they get locked up. So, and I wanted to kind of share, there's a lot of information about this show out there. What's kind of interesting is that, there's a lot of like minor characters, a lot of characters that are probably like just, I don't know if they pulled them off the street or what, but a lot of the minor characters are played by like real life cops, politicians and former criminals. So, a lot of like the gangsters, the kind of marginal characters, they were played by real criminals. And ironically, a lot of those criminals were arrested by the real life cops who acted on the show.
Oh, wow. That's kind of a funny coincidence.
Totally. I mean, so they're going for this, like this realism, in hiring actual, criminals, former criminals to act on the show. You'll never see these people again, probably. But they're there. I mean, it kind of goes with a lot of the realism of the show.
Yeah. I always liked it when directors really immerse themselves in the culture where they're making a movie or a TV run. It shows a lot of respect for not only setting up residency and filming in a specific location, but it is other ways to get the community engaged and bring some authenticity into it.
Right.
Another movie that did that was that I read about recently was how Slumdog Millionaire was filmed, and how they did lots of those scenes where almost everybody on screen other than the main actor had no idea what was going on, and they had to get clever in filming it so people weren't staring at the camera and doing a lot of things. But it really feels authentic for where they're at, and then you kind of understand why the lengths that the director went through to kind of breathe that in. So I'm going to need to watch it again with that point of view and kind of catch my eye. You said politicians as well?
Yeah, like I guess some former politicians are in the show. I mean, you really wouldn't know who they are unless you kind of looked them up. But
I do know that the principal in one of the seasons was the principal of that school.
Okay, yeah,
the female.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And I mean, and it sure seems like it, because a lot of these characters are like, it just seems like they're built for these roles. There's just different kind of people coming in and out, and then you don't see them again. So when they made the show, and I mean, it's really kind of a sleeper show because it really didn't catch on until later.
Yeah, always kind of had mediocre reviews.
Sure, but apparently the mayor of Baltimore at the time, they hated the makers of the show so much, so he kind of put out a message to the cops and said, if you see anybody who's involved with the making of this show, come down on them for anything. So actors, crew members, they get tickets for jaywalking, loitering. They would postpone production because they'd lock people up for like no reason. People will be gone, missing for a couple days, and just they come back out. So I mean, kind of crazy. I mean, the mayor was like targeting this show while it was being made in the city of Baltimore about his city. It goes back to what I said originally. I mean, he probably didn't think it's a very flattering view, and it really isn't. But again, it's true, and it's accurate. Like this is going on in your city, dude. I think what David Simon was trying to do is this. We have to expose these things in a way that's unflinching, so that we can actually do something about it.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of. He's a journalist by trade originally, and I think that's kind of his message. You really feel like he is like a journalist here, being as objective as possible, just putting this stuff out and not holding back whatsoever.
Yeah.
Another thing about the show that's kind of cool is the lack of music. There's not really like a score in this show, and I think that adds a lot to the kind of the documentary feel. I mean, there's a little symphonic thing at the end.
Pretty flat for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little symphonic thing in the credits, but like the only music you hear is like it's being played in a car and someone's driving, so it's all pretty much like it's happening.
It's environmental music as opposed to manipulative music that is focusing on emphasizing a certain scene. They let the drama play out and not really Hollywooded it up, so to speak.
Right. I mean, the only constant of all 5 seasons in terms of music is the opening theme, which is a Tom Waits song. Way Down in the Hole, which is kind of a apt choice for this show. What do you know about Tom Waits?
I've heard quite a few from his catalog. I'm impartial. I think he's cool. He's got his own vibe. I appreciate any musician who's got his own voice.
Yeah,
he's picked he's picked some interesting roles behind the camera too over the years.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, I guess like David Simon, they wanted him to give permission for this song. So, Waite said, "Okay, but I need to see the show first." So they sent videotapes to his house, and then nothing for weeks. They didn't hear from the guy, and I guess he's a pretty ornery fella. It seems like he's always
an ornery fella, I tell you.
Yeah, he's always being woken up from a hangover or something.
Sure, a little grouchy.
A little bit.
Not surprised at all.
Yeah, finally they called him, and Waite said, "Well, he got the tapes, but he couldn't play them because he didn't know how to operate his VCR."
Oh my goodness!
And so he says, "Yeah, my wife knows how to use it, and she'll be back in a couple days." And then, 2 days later, you called him up and gave him the release for the song. So it's played by him, his original versions in one season, but it's played by different artists for all the other seasons.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's pretty clever.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing that's part of the music. But I mean, it's just so much. It's really hard to say why it's my favorite show. And I think a lot of people would have that same dilemma. It's just so good.
Well, let's compare it a little bit. So if you're struggling, identifying why it's your favorite show, what are some of those other runners that you would compare it to? Like, where is it at the level of? Do you think it's the best TV show ever made? Do you think it's in the top 5? Where do you think it sits with some other programs out there?
I mean, I mean, with a lot of the stuff coming out recently, it's really hard to say it's the best. It's definitely like up there.
Sure. Is it in what most would relate to as like Breaking Bad territory?
Oh, totally. Like it's almost got that like kind of cinematic quality at times, even though it is like a gritty documentary. So, I mean, recently it's gone up there with shows like Breaking Bad. Like I love Fargo a lot. I think it's a wonderful show. But I mean, The Wire it's just got this thing about it. I'll watch a season of it like over time, and I'll keep watching it. And then when season 5's over, I'll start it over again. And that's not continuously. That's just every now and then I'll just say, okay, I'm gonna watch The Wire.
It's not a part of your daily routine.
No, I don't come home and like just put on The Wire and just quote all the lines. It's hard, but
sure. But I mean, I mentioned Breaking Bad, but I don't think shows like Breaking Bad would be possible if it wasn't for something like the Wire showing you how ambitious you can be with your story and what you're trying to convey, especially with the subject matter that's being addressed. I mean, as much as people love Breaking Bad, there's nothing good that happens in that show.
No.
But yet it's still no great. It's a great story.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that has a lot of realism too, And I mean, like this show is so beloved. This is Barack Obama's favorite show.
It is.
It's
funny you mentioned that.
Favorite character is Omar.
It's funny you mentioned that because there was a quote, and I don't remember where I got that from somewhere, but I think with the way that he said it is that he said, Omar's not my favorite person, but he's a fascinating character. And this was also one of the only things that Obama and McCain could actually agree on during the 2008 election was that The Wire was an amazing show.
Yeah.
But McCain also said that, well, it's between Seinfeld and The Wire. So that's an interesting contrast, which Seinfeld's great, but it's not. I mean,
that's another one of my favorite shows.
It's not in The Wire. It's a different thing. It's
not the same caliber.
No, not at all.
So yeah, it's Eminem's favorite show. Also, he loves it.
Yeah, something he likes that's not Detroit.
Yeah, right. It's Baltimore, but again, like it could be Detroit, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It could be.
It could easily be. I mean, these are like issues that are, happening all over the place. And it's coming to a header, just with a lot of the government kind of laws and things that are going on in terms of the war on drugs. The show came out at a pretty good time. It was going to go for a 6th season. I guess they were going to do a season about the Latino insurgents in Baltimore, but apparently none of the writers knew about it. They didn't know enough about the topic, and I'm like, research, Sure. I mean, throughout the show, I mean, you have a lot of different writers, so it's like that I know off the top of my head. Dennis Lehane, who wrote, he did Mystic River, Shutter Island, Gone Baby Gone. Like he wrote a couple episodes. Richard Price, who wrote Crooklyn, and did you see The Night Of?
I did.
Yeah, he wrote The Night Of. He's a great writer too. So they brought in a lot of different people to kind of make this possible.
And The Night Of is a good example of something that you can feel that is trying to capture some of the magic of the tone that The Wire sets.
Oh, totally.
You also kind of see that in moments of Boardwalk Empire You definitely see that in moments of the first season of True Detective, not the second because the second season sucked, but it is cool to kind of see. Like I saw most of these other shows first before I went back and saw The Wire, so there's a bit of an adjustment. Okay. You're used to more of a production, and you're also seeing a bunch of characters that I don't really know. I mean, looking at McNulty and his main character, the only thing I recognized him from was 300.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, that's that one dude in sandals from that movie where they kicked the dude
pushed
in the
on
pit.
that thing. Yeah.
very vague reference there, but
yeah.
And so you don't really go into it knowing a lot of those folks.
And that's good.
And I think that's what makes it really good, is that it's easier to buy into the character if they can play themselves or an elevation of their natural personalities. You can buy into it. There's only one really character on that show that was tough for me to get behind, and that was what's the mayor? Come on, what's his name? Or not the mayor, the politician.
Tommy?
Shit, that guy.
Oh yeah. Clay. That would be Clay Davis.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
That guy was such an ass, but
I mean, he's just like a hustler. You know what I mean?
He is.
It's just, I kind of like that character. He's funny.
Yeah, it works because it's comic relief without somebody telling jokes. Just in the absurdity that is this character and his motivations. But he does play an important role throughout the whole series.
Yeah. But like it's really like works as an ensemble. It's like there's not one actor or actress dominating the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these guys. It's a team. And they all kind of, even though they're all representing different sides of the issues, it's like they're all working together to make this happen. And that's why I kind of like it too. It's not just focusing on like the Walter White or, it's like you got all these characters. They're all unique. They all got some depth to them. You're going to hate a lot of them, but that's just how it is.
Yeah. We're shows like, and I think Lost probably started this blueprint where you would go through an episode that focused on one character only, and either focused on backstory or told something that happened from their point of view that was kind of established in the previous episode. Breaking Bad also kind of took that template and would have episodes that were not focusing on main characters. But most of those were in retrospect or to kind of provide you character backstory. And that's how The Lost did it. So every time they wanted to educate you on a character, they would give them a dedicated episode. And this started kicking in, especially around seasons 3 and on. And with The Wire, the way that they did that is it wasn't focusing on backstory. It was at all. And so, but they had this very similar tactics where you would notice an absence of a main character, but you didn't feel that there was a loss.
Okay. Yeah.
You kind of get what I'm saying, to where there's so many people in an ensemble that there was no pressure that every person has to be involved in every single episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Like okay, where's, you don't go, oh, where's that guy been for, three episodes.
Well, Omar's a great example of that, is that his presence kind of comes and goes. He kind of wanders in and out. And so he's
like the wind.
His presence is always there, even when he's not on the screen. So when he does appear, it feels very natural. It doesn't feel like he's there to push forth some kind of plot device or to push the narrative forward. And I don't know. I just think that's really interesting that they can do that you can bring these characters in because it's part of what you want to accomplish. But they might move something forward. They might not. They might speculate. It was just complementary to the whole story.
Yeah, exactly. So and I mean, going back to your question, like where they get a lot of these actors, made me think of a show called Oz. Remember Oz?
The prison show.
Yeah, it's like one of the because
HBO.
I love that show. Yeah, well, a lot of the characters on Oz
Ernie
are in The
Hudson,
Wire.
right?
Yeah, but like a lot of like the kind of minor characters on Oz, they like show up later in The Wire. So,
that's right.
Just kind of different. Yeah. Like you'll see him here and there, or like, I've gone back and watched the Oz, but it's funny because it's like, you'll go down the rabbit hole sometimes. You'll see a show, you'll be watching a show and you're like, that guy's on The Wire. And then it's like, oh, and there's another guy. Walking Dead's like that. Walking Dead's got a couple characters that are from The Wire.
Yeah.
And you just kind of point that guy out.
You recognize him. But with Oz is that's one of the ones that I've gone back to try to watch, and because when it's from and it's time, it's almost unwatchable because
it's a little cheesy.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up like it did when I saw it at the time.
Someone gets like shivved and the music comes up and it's like, okay,
all right,
it gets all dramatic. Yeah, I mean, it's a little, it's a bit much.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, but I think like a show like that might have paved the way for The Wire, where it's like you're going to show this reality that a lot of people aren't too familiar with, and just kind of rip it apart and show you every kind of facet of it.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, and I mean a lot of these characters too. It's like their motivations are completely like ambiguous. Is there any character that crossed over? That you recall? Any character that you thought was going to be good, so to speak, turns bad, or vice versa? I mean, it just kind of depends because they all have their moments. Like a lot of them do like illegal stuff, or do things they're not supposed to do to close the case, right?
Yeah.
You never really see any of the quote unquote bad guys kind of cross over. They don't really snitch on each other. Like, one guy gets caught and he goes to jail for 20 years, confesses to a bunch of crimes he didn't commit just so he can kind of save the boss, of the drug card, the drug thing. So, but I mean, so the characters really stay true to who they are in the moment. But yeah, you don't really see that. I mean, but there's a thin line, because it's like a lot of the cops, they do illegal stuff all the time. I mean, they're just trying to solve the case. So it's like, we're going to break some laws, cut some corners.
Or get somebody off the street. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to cut a deal with this guy so we can get this guy. I mean, like the only character who kind of dances around is his name's Bubbles, and he's played by Andre Royo, and he does a great job on this show.
Sure.
He plays this,
he's
convincing. A junkie. Oh, yeah. And he just looks grungy as hell, man. Like he said he was so grungy when he did this show, like he would walk around in character, like with his costume on, and people would come up to him on the street and just offer him heroin, like not knowing who he was, just like thinking he was a junkie.
There was a funny quote that he mentioned where he said someone gave him heroin and said, "Look like you're having a rough day or something."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good compliment.
Yeah. He called that his street Oscar, actually.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Right.
That's awesome. Yeah. And with, I think, with the way that the characters kind of go in the show, and you don't really get attached too much to one, but what I kind of found out is what success looks like in their eyes. You understand their motivations, and in the end of the day, there really wasn't anything achieved. It's more like just treading water. You're not getting any closer to shore. You're not going any backwards. So you either sink or you just float there and try to survive. And so no matter how many people cops lock up, there's always going to be somebody else in line to replace those guys. No matter how many drugs you put away. It's the same thing.
And that kind of happens like around season 3 and 4, where it's like, Avon, he goes to jail for a bit, and his kind of his dynasty wanes a little bit, and then another guy comes up and fills his shoes. Marlo Stanfield, he comes in and starts to be the big guy on the street, and then when the season's over, like he's still reigning supreme, Sure. And it's like if someone shoots him, then another guy will step up. I mean, it's just a constant kind of evolving thing. That's where it's like we have to look at the root of the problem in order to fix this, and the root of the problem is all the issues that are mentioned on the show. Education, drug abuse and reform, all those things. I think what Simon's saying is that, we need to look at the root of the problem and fix that so that we can actually fix the problem. If that makes any sense.
He's kind of highlighting what the real issues are, not the surface level issues, which are the easiest for the public to focus on.
Sure. And it makes the show hard to digest for some, I'd say, well, just kind of like, it's just hard to like kind of look at the truth and be exposed to it without them holding anything back.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot for a second and let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit about the technology in The Wire. Because to me, that was one of, I think, the most fascinating things was the devices and the things that the cops used to make their case and to try to bust people. Because they obviously had no money. So you're seeing the things that the cops had to do, their outpost places where they would, go and work. The way that the role that, maybe say computers, so to speak, come in, and the radios, and the way they kind of trapped people. I thought was pretty fascinating. What are your thoughts on how the police use technology?
It's kind of cool how it evolves through the show, because in the first season, and this is obviously where the show gets its name from. It's like The Wire. In the first season, they're tapping payphones. So this is back where you actually had payphones. So they figure out there's these certain payphones in the hood where they're tapping them.
Mm-hmm.
So they start using them, and the only caveat is that a cop has to be watching the guy actually answering the phone or making the call in order for them to record it. And they can only record it for a certain length of time and figure out if it's relevant or not. Otherwise, they have to throw it out. So it's like you have people monitoring this stuff all the time, and it seems like a lot of work, what they're doing. It's like, every time it's like, okay, so-and-so has picked up the cell phone, go run at the top of the building, take a picture of them, document the time. And then, so there's very meticulous in the way they take care of it. After season 1, Stringer gets wise to what's going on. He finds out that it's the payphones that are probably the problem. So it's like, all the payphones are destroyed. So it's like, now you have no wire. And so now it turns over to cell phones. In this case, it's like disposable cell phones. So they start figuring out ways they can kind of tap these cell phones. They end up getting a cell phone from another guy and kind of using that as a dummy cell phone to, be able to kind of tap and listen into these other cell phones. So it's really impressive, and it's I would have known about this stuff if it wasn't for the show.
How authentic do you think it was?
I think it's very authentic. Just thinking of, I couldn't attest to it not having seen it, but it's like with the amount of law enforcement people working on the show and involved, I think a lot of input was given into these actual kind of tricks that the cops use to, one thing I thought was kind of cool was, and this was actually based on a real thing, was they'd have to come up with other little things besides The Wire to profile these criminals. And, because going in, they didn't know all these guys' names. They didn't know who was a heavy and who wasn't. So Bubbles, he's actually he's an informant. That they give him a little drug money every now and then to give him information. So Bubbles has this hustle where he sells hats. Okay, so he pushes around the shopping cart with hats, and then he puts a different hat on a guy. He has
the red Gilligan hat, right?
Well, yeah. So but he's selling fedoras and stuff. So it's he puts a red hat on this guy if he's a big name. He puts another hat on this guy if he's not such a big character. And they're taking pictures of these guys, and then later on he goes back, and it's okay, the hats are going to identify who's who's kind of high up, because it's really a hierarchy,
Yeah.
And it's very organized. The way they present the criminal organizations is not just thrown together. It's extremely organized.
Well, I was reading an article on The Verge about how the producers of The Wire were asked by the Baltimore police to kind of tone down some of the things that they showed and not reveal certain vulnerabilities that the police kind of had. And
interesting.
Well, yeah. So what I thought was really fascinating is that a lot of police, they use this process where they call it a stingray, and it's a system that's transported in a car. Basically, it spoofs a cell phone tower, and you can get different data from various devices in the area. It helps you pinpoint locations.
Right.
It doesn't have GPS or anything, but police officers and whatnot can send commands to a phone or ring on demand to kind of test out numbers and stuff. And in The Wire, their system was called Triggerfish. That's what was in the season 3, and it was very, very similar. So they had similar things that they were showing in the show that were not necessarily common knowledge to a lot of people, even at the time. So criminals could watch the show and pick up on police tactics that were actually being used.
They were spoiling everything for everybody else.
Yeah, they're all right, you're going to need to tone it back a little bit because of the authenticity was a little too accurate.
Yeah.
Which is a great compliment.
Right, because they're up on the technology.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right on. So any last thoughts about The Wire? Who should go see this show? Who's it for?
I mean, I think for anybody who enjoys like crime drama, honestly, but I mean, not just that, but anybody who likes like a great story, you know, because like going back to my original comment, like a lot of this, it's like a great novel, the way it unfolds, and you know,
it's like a
like
book
any
on
great
TV.
novel, yeah, you know, like any great novel, it's not going to be like pretty, you know, it's gonna really show you how something is, and you know, for those who say it might be outdated, I mean, if it was outdated, these issues wouldn't still be happening today.
That's true. And it's still up on HBO.
Yep.
It's worth checking out.
Yes. Yeah, still streaming on HBO. I got the DVDs, like I said.
Both
not a lot
sets,
of
mind you.
Both sets. Yeah. One of them is no longer in print, so I have the original. Yeah, the original DVD box set where all the DVDs are in like these little pieces of plastic saran wrap.
It's kind of creepy.
So yeah, right. So.
Well, I would like to see you claim how much you love the show. I've been hearing about it for a long time before I finally got around to watching it. Let me ask you some trivia questions. Let's see how hip you are.
All right, is this multiple choice?
Yeah, you got some multiple. I got a little bit of both.
Okay.
Most of the stuff that I had to go pull online, everything is just very facts because there's so many facts and details. So if you have seen The Wire and you love it, just start searching facts and trivia about it. It'll give you an extra appreciation for the depth that's in the show. So when you go back and watch it again, you can start to spot a lot of things within it.
I mean, there's like a whole website devoted to it. There's a really good book I have, obviously, that's written by one of the writers that kind of goes in depth, has a lot of interviews. So it's like there's a lot of stuff connected to this show.
That's awesome.
More than a lot of other shows, you know?
All right, let's get some trivia on.
All right.
Okay, so I ripped these off from The Guardian. They probably had the best quiz that I figured was the most obtainable. Again, I don't really know how strong these questions are, so you could totally ace these and sound totally rad, or you might not know. So let's start off. Which policeman's gun goes missing in Season 3? Dozerman, Bunks, or Landsman?
Dozerman.
Dozerman is correct.
Yeah.
All right, question 2. Who steals Namon's stash? Is it Michael, Dookie, or Kennard? Or Kennard?
Okay, Namon's
stash. Yeah, who steals it?
Michael, Dookie, or Kennard?
Kennard, is that right?
Yeah. This is Season 4.
Do you wish to use a lifeline?
Yes. Can I call home? Can I call a friend? Hold on. I want to say.
Don't be stalling
Dookie?
while you're Googling. No.
Like it helps to repeat the question. That's why I'm stalling.
It's Kennard.
All
right, so 1 out of 2. All right, question set by Aidan Gillian. What kind of sandwich was Garcetti complaining to Norman about having to eat repeatedly on the mayoral campaign trail? Was it kielbasa, tuna sub, or BLT?
Tuna sub?
Tuna sub, that's it. Wasn't that kielbasa sausage?
No, that's Chicago.
Yeah. All right, question 4.
Chicago.
What sport connects Burl with Marlowe? Golf, American football, or pigeon fancying? What sport connects Burl with Marlowe? Golf, American football, or pigeon fancying? Whatever that is.
Pigeon what?
Pigeon fancying? That's what it says, man. I don't know what that is.
Like pigeons with swords?
Sure.
Okay.
I thought it was admiring pigeons, but like, ooh, look at that pigeon.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Pigeon fancy. All right. I thought you said fencing. The pigeons.
No, it's golf.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Hey, nobody's perfect, man. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah. Let me look these up.
All right. Who do Chris and Snoop give up to cheese? Proposition Joe, Hungry Man, or Michael?
Snoop.
Chris and Snoop give up to cheese. Proposition Joe.
Hungry Man?
Hungry Man is it?
Yeah.
All right. For $500, what is the name of Bunk's never-seen wife? Nadine, Nina, or Nisha?
That would be Nadine.
Nadine is correct. Add some life to this.
He's always cheating on her.
Yeah, there you know. All right.
Yeah.
Question 7. What novel does D'Angelo discuss in prison? And I'm not even going to give you options on this.
Okay.
What novel does D'Angelo discuss in prison?
Great Gatsby.
That is it.
Yeah.
I figured that one you'd definitely have to get that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Question 8. Who wins the basketball game between East and West Baltimore? East, West, or the game is called off due to violent dispute?
Game's called off?
No, the East won.
Oh,
they have the
that's
game.
Right. Okay. That's right.
I knew that one.
Prop Joe.
Yeah. All right. Question 9. What color ribbon does McNulty's serial killer leave on his victim's wrists? Is it a red, pink, or green ribbon?
Red?
Red is correct.
Yeah.
All right. We got a few more for you.
Okay.
What case was Freeman working on that got him sidelined for over a decade? Was it the investigation into the Barksdale crew, a campaign finance investigation, or a murder-robbery of an 80-year-old woman?
Murder-robbery?
Murder-robbery is correct.
80-year-old woman?
80-year-old woman. Yeah, it seemed to be somewhat of an easy one.
Great character.
What sport did Bunk play at Edmondson? Was it American football, lacrosse, or rowing?
Lacrosse.
Lacrosse is correct. All right, you're on a roll. Let's keep it going.
All right.
Who does Bodie work for after Avon? Marlowe, the Greeks, or Quintel Williamson?
Quintel.
Marlowe.
Oh.
Not Quintel.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
All right.
All right. What is said to be McNulty's scent? Guinness, sex, or Listerine and Jameson's?
Sex.
Oh, Listerine and Jameson's. I know.
Well,
I know.
One episode, they comment that he smells like sex.
Well, that's probably true.
Yeah. Okay.
He's got it going on. All right, 2 more.
Yeah. Okay.
Which character is played by Melvin Williams, a real-life drug lord arrested in the 80s following an investigation involving co-writer Ed Burns? Was it Bunny Colvin, Cuddy, or the Deacon?
That would be the Deacon.
The Deacon is correct.
And that's the character that inspired Avon.
Oh, well, there you go. Look at you just dropping it. Okay.
Yeah, no.
All right, last one. The actor who plays Omar is called Michael Williams. Which famous British actor was the other well-known Michael Williams married to? Helen Mirren, Judi Dench, or some other lady? Which of those two?
Some other lady.
Got cut off.
And this question has nothing to do with The Wire, really, but Judi Dench.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that was a guess.
Oh, okay, well. Yeah, 50-50 shot. Right. Come on, own it.
I got it right.
Yeah.
Well, some other lady.
You want a couple hard ones I have here?
Yeah, give me a couple.
All right, the number of dead girls found in the container on the docks.
Oh, jeez. Was it 8?
No, it was 13.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, well, you said it. Step it up.
Yeah, one more.
All right, McNulty takes a job as a patrolman in season 4 in what district?
Western?
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right, see? Not so bad.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Give me one more.
Want another one? Hit me.
Yeah, let's do another one. Hit me up. Let's do it.
Snoop is seen buying this object in the beginning of season 4.
That would be a... it's like a chainsaw?
Less saw, less chain.
It's like a nail... like a bone... Nail gun?
Nail gun.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect. Not bad.
Good one.
Not bad.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's end it with one last one.
Okay.
The subject, Pribolensky, teaches at Edward...
Presbalewski.
Yeah, that was like, whoa. The subject, Presbalewski, teaches at Edward Tillman Middle School.
That'd be math.
Math is correct. Nice job.
Thank you.
All right, The Wire. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yes.
I definitely learned a lot. And I also learned that my brother is a big nerd for The Wire.
Hey. Highly recommended to everybody.
He doesn't own 1, but 2 box sets.
That's right.
Yeah, and if you ever hard up on cash, you can eBay that other one, I'm sure.
Hey, I'll try. What do we got coming up on the next one?
I think we are going to do a deep dive into Star Wars The Last Jedi, now that we can just talk freely about it and not worry about spoiling anything for anybody.
Yeah. So you haven't seen it yet, then get out of the house.
Yeah, skip episode 5 that's coming up. We'll talk about Star Wars.
Nice.
All right, well, I had a great time. If you're interested, we would really appreciate you checking us out on Facebook, Instagram, and you can also check us on Twitter at The Harsch Review. If you enjoyed this time, please go ahead and give us a little review or rating over on iTunes podcast player, whatever podcast player you prefer. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you next time with a review of the Star Wars, The Last Jedi. This is Sean.
Nice. And this is Ryan.
Have a good one.
See you later.